Hello and welcome to Help for a Hurting World. My name is Ben Collins and I work at Grace Central Coast. I am the Five Cities campus pastor, but I am also currently, as we've reorganized everything, I am the lead of our spiritual care team. And so thank you for joining us here on Help for a Hurting World. Tonight, we are discussing what it's like to be a mom in the midst of COVID-19 and this pandemic, this crisis that we're all in. I am not qualified to speak to that subject, so I have some wonderful people alongside me tonight to help us discuss that and think through what it's like to be a mom. And as we've been going through this Help for a Hurting World series, we've discussed a number of different topics, and you can find all of those on our YouTube channel, which is our Grace Central Coast channel. And our playlist, Help for a Hurting World, is a place where you can find where we've discussed on live discussion panels topics like anxiety, anger, loneliness, what physicians think about COVID-19, also financial help as well, and other topics. And so tonight I'm looking forward to hearing from these moms, and these are all members of Grace Central Coast. And they're just gonna go around and introduce themselves as we just get this discussion started. So Hannah, how about you introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi, I'm Hannah Nelson, and my husband works at Grace Central Coast. I've got 4 little boys right now at home. I have a 10-year-old, an 8-year-old, 4-year-old, and a 1-year-old. So yeah, just learning how to homeschool and then also take care of 2 littles right now.
That's a lot. Yeah, Jess, how about you? Can you tell us who you are?
Yeah, so I'm Jess Jantos, and I'm the Women's Care Director at Grace Central Coast. I was on the loneliness panel, if you saw that a few weeks ago. But so I've got 4 kids as well. My oldest daughter is 14. I have a 12-year-old son, 6-year-old son, and then my baby is turning 5 tomorrow.
Well,
So I have the whole very wide spread of doing homeschool-ish with, a middle schooler all the way down to a preschooler.
Great. Maybe we'll have you define homeschool-ish
Yeah.
later. I'd like to start with defining terms, and maybe that's one we should talk about. But it's great. How about Bobby? Can you introduce yourself too?
Yes, I am Bobby, and my husband is a pastor at Grace Central Coast, and we have a 2-year-old daughter, a 1-year-old son, and I'm currently pregnant with another boy.
Awesome. Thanks for telling us a little bit about who you are. And even though I'm not a mom, obviously, and can't totally contribute here, I have experienced a little bit of just having 3 little kids at home, 4 and under, and so I have, my wife is similar in the state that you guys are in. And yet I just want to thank you all for joining us tonight and being able to speak to moms really from a Christian perspective. It's one thing to be a mom at this time, running around doing all these things, but what we try to provide here on Help for a Hurting World is what it's like to do that with God with you. God alongside you, God at your right hand, God as your strength and as your refuge. And so that's what we're going to be talking about tonight. And so if you're not a Christian, if you wouldn't say that that's who you are at this time, I'm so glad that you found this channel and that you're able to tune in. And we hope that you are encouraged to think about the ways in which God is helping these moms really walk through this season in a way that is different and unique, and that might be something for you to consider and pursue. And we're, in our conversations beforehand, I'm happy to tell you that none of these moms have it all figured out, and that we are going to be just really talking and sharing together with what the experiences of life has been like in this time. And so to get us started, the first thing that we wanted to talk about, Jess, you were talking about what it's like to kind of be in this mindset of like, hey, are you going to survive or are you going to thrive? And don't waste this quarantine. And we were kind of talking about how that can bring some pressure. So do you want to just speak to that, sort of those terms that are being thrown out there and sort of the ways that you're working through that yourself personally?
Yeah. Both of those phrases, I don't want to waste this season and I don't want to just survive, I want to thrive, have really sort of rubbed my heart the wrong way the last few weeks. And it's taken me a little bit of time to sort of think like, well, why is that? I mean, it's true. I don't want to waste this time and I would much rather thrive than survive. But something that I realize is that it puts this enormous weight on me and almost guilt if I am experiencing parts of my life that are not enjoyable, which, as it turns out, is a lot of moments right now. And so I'm like, well, okay, so if both of these things are true, I don't want to waste this time, and I would rather thrive than survive. But how could I reframe that so that I don't end up feeling guilty at the end of the day when I can barely keep my head up by 7 p.m. So I've been thinking about it and praying about it a lot of how can I shift that in my heart. And something that we talked about earlier that really just made me sort of a light bulb moment was thinking of this season as enduring faithfully. And I love that phrase instead of thriving or surviving, because thriving and surviving means that I'm doing it on my own willpower. I'm trying to fix the situation. I'm trying to control my life for these certain things. And if there's anything that we've learned from this is we really can't control a whole lot right now. And I can't really even keep peace in my home to the level that I want to do it. And so because I can't control that, if I can look at it through a lens of enduring this season faithfully and using what the tools that God gives me in this season of, his gentleness, faithfulness, goodness, self-control, these fruits of the Spirit that he promises us, when I can tap into those and really try to use those instead of my own strength to change the situation, it changes my heart and my perspective. And this does not always go well or easy, but it takes practice. Another thing that I'm really trying to do is, and this has been a phrase that honestly I've been using since high school, but it's choosing joy. So, right, like joy isn't based on my circumstances. It's based on a deep heart thankfulness for what the Lord has given me. I have 4 kids. They're crazy, but gosh, they're healthy. And I'm so grateful for that. I have a roof over my head. I have, so in choosing gratitude, it shifts my heart to joy, even though it might feel like the circumstances around me are not always, the most happy. I can still choose the joy in it. And so that's how I'm trying to reframe this, not just surviving, but thriving, and not wasting this time. Like, what am I going to learn from this? How can I grow in this? How can I shift my perspective so that I can finish the day knowing that even though I didn't handle everything perfectly, I was faithful in what the Lord has given me.
That's great. That's great. Hannah and Bobby, anything to add to that topic of Jess's there?
I really appreciated, Ben, you sent an article earlier that talked about that concept of endurance, and I don't remember who it was by exactly. Maybe you could say
I can look it up. Yeah, I've got
okay,
it.
yeah, sorry, we can post it. But it was talking about this concept of endurance and not like thriving or just surviving or whatever, but it was talking about how when you look at like the long distance picture, like this mountaintop, and you're looking at it and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm never going to reach the end of this. And I keep thinking, my husband and I were talking the other night about the potential, like how long this might go, this whole COVID-19 quarantine and everything. And when I think about the entirety of it, I start to feel like I'm never going to survive. I'm not going to make it. But this article talked about like, we just look from tree to tree, like every little spot we can get to. And I kept thinking of Frozen too. I don't know, most moms have seen that, but she keeps thinking about like, do the next right thing. And just that concept that because of Christ in us, we can just keep doing that next right thing and keep going to that next little tree and next spot, and not focusing on like the whole long haul of everything that is ahead of us, but just what we can get to every day. So I thought that was really encouraging.
Yeah, I posted the article in the live chat there. It's by a guy named Josh Squires. So he's a counseling pastor. So yeah, thanks for sharing that. Yeah, Bobby, anything you want to add to just kind of that whole idea of not wasting the season and surviving and thriving?
Yeah, I mean, like what we were talking about earlier, how you kind of mentioned Paul and just the way that he lived and just enduring with, specks of joy throughout that, and how we could be more like that too in this season and the one after this.
Yeah, it's good.
Yeah, I think it's, the Christian perspective is like Jesus talks about, like, hey, tomorrow has enough trouble of its own. And if you want the strength for tomorrow, it's not there today, but God will meet you and he will give you what you need for today. And so I think that's very much, it's a humbling reality to have it that way, because we want to have all that we need to get through the long haul, to get to the top of the mountain, to get through this season. But God doesn't promise us that, because if he gave us that, then we would need him in the midst of it. Yeah. We'd be, oh, I got this covered. I can thrive all on my own. And then we'd lose him in the midst of it, which wouldn't be the best thing for us. So yeah, I think I love the way that you've kind of graded against that, Jess. I think that's really helpful, just in thinking through the ways that can bring unnecessary guilt and pressure on moms right now.
Yeah.
So.
I want to say something to the verse that you just quoted about not worrying about tomorrow because it has enough worries about its own. And you think about, like, when we're talking to our kids and they're worried about something that's happening next week, what do we say? We say, don't worry about that. Yeah. Like, that's in the future. Let's just do today. And I mean, parents across the world, like, that's what we say to our kids. And so, like, when you think about that and our relationship with God as our Father, and he's saying the same thing to us, like, so sometimes that helps me to remember that the advice that I give my children is what he's trying to tell me also. Just sometimes it's harder for me to hear, but it's true. We don't have to worry about tomorrow. We just need to do the next right thing in faith.
Right.
Today.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just follow Frozen 2. That's
full of wisdom.
So true.
I mean, you could say the reason Frozen 2 is right is because it reflects the truth. So, but yeah, that's awesome. Hey, if you have questions as you're watching, there's a number that was posted in the live chat there on YouTube. It's 805-316-1202. And you can text questions there. They'll come in anonymously and we'll bring them to the panel. We have a couple more questions that we're going to work through to get started. But if you have some brewing for these moms, feel free to send those in and we'll work through as many as we can. So the second thing that we want to talk about was kind of from earlier conversations as well. We're talking about comparison and just the how prevalent that is with social media and everything. And Hannah, you wanted to speak to that. So what's comparison been like for you and your experience of it in this season of COVID-19?
Yeah. So for me, it's been, I think, a lifelong struggle of comparing myself to others, as I think, men, but women also naturally tend to do. And then you reach motherhood and it's a whole nother level of comparing to every mom around you. And particularly we're talking about today with social media, and in this time where that's kind of our outlet and our way that we're connecting with other women. We're looking at social media and we may be seeing everyone on there who's like just flourishing during this time, and all the women that are thriving, and we're sitting there in our house with I can see all my dishes behind me and thinking like, oh man, I'm nowhere near that amazing. And so, yeah, so for me, I actually, Jess and I were talking about this earlier, but for a long period of time, I left social media of any form just because of the negative impact that I felt like it had on my life and the way that it made me constantly compare myself to others. And yeah, just instead of focusing on who God had made me to be, I was looking at everyone else and wanting to be like them. And then ironically, when all this started up again, I rejoined Instagram because I needed people. I missed everyone. But I think part of it is I believe the Lord has grown me and changed me in my life. And something, Sue Donaldson, she's a woman at Grace Central Coast, great mentor, great person. She talked about how we can look at others and instead of comparing ourselves to them and saying like, oh, I wish I was like that person, I wish I had that, we can look at them and we can be grateful for who they are, who God's made them to be, but also be inspired by them and the things they have done. Not say like, oh, I need to be at that level, I need to be that perfect in doing that thing, but to recognize it's okay that our house isn't perfect. It's okay that we're barely making it through these days right now. we can look around at the women in us and be proud of them for the good job they're doing and be like inspired by the stuff they're doing and say like, oh, I'd love to be able to do that. Maybe someday we'll do some beautiful craft like that at my house, but right now we're just going to get through today, and that's okay. So I think that's something really important to remember during this time when our only outlets to others are these little screens that we see or our phones and the perfect images that we're seeing of others, just to remember that it's okay that we're kind of struggling through these days. It's okay that our lives don't look perfect. And we don't need to sit there wishing that we had this or that or something else. So that's kind of just my take on comparison and social media during this time, and especially as a mom. So.
Yeah, it is so funny how like this comparison thing in social media has been around since social media, right? And it's something that we talk to our teenagers about, and even as moms, we've talked about it, and now it is really our one of the primary ways to stay connected during this time. And so it is finding that balance. I think it's also really important to, and again, we talked about this, pre-COVID-19, but being vulnerable even in our posts and the way that we're portraying our lives. Like it's okay for us as moms to post a picture of our dirty dishes and just say like, I wish it was clean, but it's not. And you know what? God still loves me anyways. And I apparently have a lot more days at home to do the dishes. So, so just, practicing vulnerability in it also is important.
I love that.
Or even remembering that just because someone did take and post a pretty picture, that things might not be so pretty on the other side, but even if they are, to, still be supportive and happy for your sister in Christ. And
and then on the flip side of comparison, we were talking about the other aspect where we can tend to feel guilty because of someone's life right now, especially, is so much harder than what we're going through. I look at New York City and it's horrendous over there, and it's so much harder than what I'm going through. So I think I can tend to beat myself up because I think, oh, well, why can't I survive and handle this? And why am I so tired or exhausted because I have to homeschool my kids? But I think that God gives us each the different trials that we're in, and that's what he wants us to learn through and go through. And we don't need to feel guilty that it's hard for us. It's okay to accept that things are hard, even though someone else's life is hard as well. It doesn't minimize what we're going through. And I think that's a very important thing of comparison as well, the other aspect of it.
Yeah.
Recognize.
It ties it back to being faithful with what we've been given.
Yeah.
We've been put here in this home in this time. And so we're called to be faithful now. The people in New York City have been put there, and they're being called to be faithful in that.
Yeah.
And so we can just, we're not going to minimize what we're going through because something over there seems so much worse, but we're going to say, I'm being faithful here. I'm going to pray for them because that does look really, really, really hard.
But it doesn't make our own hardships go away to just say, oh, look at what this other person's going through. It's not a way to solve or make our problems better. We've got to learn to rely on Christ and our own issues, not just because we can say, oh, someone's life is harder.
Yeah.
Because that's not going to solve
someone's
anything.
life is always going to be harder.
Yeah. Very true.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, I think that's just a really helpful way to think about that just because someone else's life is hard doesn't make our issues go away. We're still called to faithfulness. We're still called to rely on God and his presence in these times. So that's great. And I think that's a really interesting kind of flip side to comparison that I don't normally think about. And, but it's helpful to talk about because, Hannah, I'm actually like you. I was off Instagram for like 2 years, but I got back on because I was like, I feel very alone. So I like kind of came back on for that same reason, but I've noticed like, oh, I'm kind of creeping back into old patterns as well. So that's helpful for me too. So thanks.
Cool.
The third question that we wanted to get to was just kind of, it's not to say like, hey, this season's all good, but Christians do believe that there is a place for seeing a purpose in hardship, a purpose in struggle, and that there are ways that we can grow and learn from that. And so, Bobby, what's something good that you see from, we were talking about this earlier, something good that you see coming out of this season for yourself and your family?
Yeah, so it's pretty interesting in my situation, since my kids are so little, and just with my personality, we're home a lot and I'm just kind of a homebody. So we didn't get out too often besides, going to MOPS and Bible study and occasional park and play dates. But things are a little different now that we are quarantined at home. We are actually getting outside a lot more. So we've been going on walks, and we found and stick to our little route, and got more backyard toys and a swing set, and have been doing that a lot more. I have been letting my kids get messy, which I usually don't like. So I've been letting, the baby crawl around in the grass and get a little dirty. And Kingsley now owns slime and has been getting that everywhere and painting. But they love it. And I think, basically just getting outside more and letting the kids be creative and get messy is something that I want to take to the next season after this.
That's good.
Yeah, I love, that is something I'm trying to do, is looking back on the day and saying well, I don't think I would have done that like that if we weren't in this season, but that wasn't as bad as I thought it might be. So same thing, Bobby, I let my kids have free reign with a garden hose in the backyard today. And I was like, I'm just not going to look. Yes. Also, you can't come inside until you're dry, which means you're going to be outside for a long time. But they had a blast, and I think we're finding as moms, maybe this is generalization, but I feel like I'm letting go of certain expectations, because I want my kids to experience joy too. Because maybe we'll touch on this later, but we have to remember our kids are going through a really hard time now too, big time. And so we as moms, our lives have shifted, but so have theirs. And so how can we see that and meet them there in their needs and their, when they're little, they don't really even understand, why am I not going to school? And so how can we provide some joy and fun? And so I'm saying this, but also I'm the person who I don't do well with activities and crafts. And so beautiful people have been sending me ideas, and I can't do any of them. That's just not my personality. Mm-hmm. But I can just give my kids a garden hose and everyone wins. So just finding things that work for your family and work for you, and bring joy to them, because that's pretty important right now in this season.
Mm-hmm.
I've loved the intentionality we've had. I think my older too, just so much more time together. So we're having a lot more conversations than I think we normally would have had, and deeper conversations. So I just hope I can continue to be that intentional with them after this time, just because of all this time that we have. These big things are coming up. So yeah, that's my hope, that's what I take out of this.
Great. That's great. Yeah, and some of what you guys said actually relates to we've had a few questions come in, and they relate to some of those things. So let's just jump into that first one that came in, which is, how do you calm your child down when they get antsy? And what words do you tell them?
What
words do you tell them?
I think to help them acknowledge that it's okay that they're feeling the way that they're feeling, and try to allow some space and some activities. I'm not a very crafty person either. We don't really sit down and do arts and crafts, mainly because my oldest is only 2, but she loves getting messy, and I do not like cleaning up after her or her, but kind of just allowing what works best for them to kind of get the antsy and energy out in a productive way.
Yeah. we're so blessed to live in such a beautiful place during this time that we can go outside. I mean, it did rain a couple days and that
Yeah.
was really hard. But like when it's nice out, I just try to, like, I have very antsy kids, like they're just high energy kids. And so this is a struggle that I have probably 20 times a day of that starts, the energy starts ramping up. You can see them starting to spin a little bit out of control and you've got to decide in a split second, like, we got to deal with this now. So I love what Bobby said, like acknowledging what they're feeling, because a lot of times when kids are antsy and they're amped up, like there's something else going on inside of their heart. They don't understand what's going on. They feel frustrated, they feel sad, and it's just coming out in this like high energy, where as a mom, you just want to be like, just calm down. But that never works, right? So it really does take like stopping what you're doing and saying, I see that you're feeling really big feelings.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that. Let's like change the scenery immediately. If we're inside, let's go outside. If we're in the backyard, let's go to the front yard. Like, let's just change scenery, try to figure out what you're feeling. And then, yeah, just anything that helps. I'm really big into like regulating my kids. So like, do you need to ride your bike? Do we need to jump on the trampoline? Do we need to run laps around the house inside if it's raining?
Yeah.
We're going to do that.
Yeah. Yeah. Lots of walks over here. We've walked our neighborhood so many times a day. And when it was raining too, I think that was hard, especially if you're in a tiny place or if you're somewhere where you maybe don't have a lot of yard space. There's lots of good resources online for getting energy out. We watch a little show called Go Noodle, which is, I don't know if you guys ever watched that with your kids. It's all about getting their energy out. So if you're stuck indoors, there's lots of good resources on YouTube as well. But yeah, I love the talking about how they're feeling. Good.
Yeah, that's great. It's yeah, definitely doing a lot of laps over here too. So high energy kids is definitely a thing. On the kid front, I had another question come in, and it's this: are any of your children super social? And how are you helping those extroverted children in all of this? Great question.
Mm-hmm.
So different than high energy, but like high
Yeah.
social energy.
Mhm.
So
So-
what are you guys doing?
3 of my kids are high energy, and then my oldest is a major extrovert. So she's 14 and school was her life and her friends are her life. And it's been hard, and we've had to really get creative. She did like a virtual sleepover with a friend where they like both started their movie on Netflix at the same time and had each other on speakerphone and so they could talk about it while they were watching it, and they had snacks. This whole screen time and limit, like there's no limit to screen time right now. So if you want to FaceTime with a friend, like that's great. I'm really trying to encourage that via just texting, because that doesn't really fill that void of needing community and friendship. So call on the phone, FaceTime, whatever you need to do. We did drive to a friend's house, and out the car, she talked to her friend, just because sometimes you just need to see their face.
Yeah.
But again, like, I think just acknowledging how these extroverted kids are feeling, like we're feeling it too. Introvert, extrovert, we're all missing that community. And so this is just such a great time to really show empathy to our kids of like, yeah, it's hard not getting to see our friends. I joke with my oldest now that I'm her new best friend. She doesn't really agree with me, but we're going with it.
That's so cute.
So that's a teenager, but what about you girls?
My boys, my 10 and 8-year-old, they're both very social. We've done a lot of Zoom calls with friends. Another thing we did is I've been having them write a lot of cards and letters to their friends, which they kind of hate because they don't like writing, but it's been, but instead of mailing them, we've driven around and we're like delivering them. So we see their home. Sometimes we see the friends out there and can talk from the window, kind of like what you were saying. And then they're taking the time to like think through what they really want to say to these friends, which I feel like has been a good thing for them to really consider these friendships more than they maybe would have, just by getting to spend so much time with them, and it's making them appreciate them more. But Zoom is a great thing too. And yeah, the screen time, just letting go a little bit of all those I hate screen time, but yeah, trying to let go of that during the season, recognizing that they need it right now because it's kind of what they have. So, and like phone calls are good too, but yeah.
Getting to see them face to face, even if it's on a computer, it's
Yeah.
the best we're going to do right now. So
Yeah, like the other day, my son Luke and his friends played Legos together over Zoom, which was so cute. I loved it. So stuff like that.
Yeah, with Kingsley, I feel like I have like a little easier just because, she's only 2. Like she loves friends, but she probably forgets a lot of friends too. But I'm just trying to, even as a 2-year-old, she can pick up that things are different. So I've been just trying to make things as normal as possible. And I have been feeling bad that she hasn't got to see her little best friend and get to go to the park and be around other kids. So I've just been trying to go a little bit the extra mile and actually play with her and engage with her just a little bit more lately.
That's good.
Yeah, we can definitely, like in our home, I notice a pattern of just like, oh, I'm doing things and my kids are over there, but actually going and engaging them, like you said, Bobby, I think is so valuable. And biblically, you guys are totally right. We're built for relationships. Christians believe in a God that's not just a single person, but 3 persons, that we come out of a community, that all of creation comes out of a community. And so we're all built for friendships and relationships, and that's what our future is looking forward to as well, is a eternity, not just on your own planet all by yourself, but with a whole bunch of people that you love dearly and that you can be together with forever in the presence of God. And so that's one of the reasons why all this hurts so bad. And you can see it across the board. Kids are feeling it, adults are feeling it, everyone's feeling it. And so but those are some great strategies and for how to bring kids along and help them. And I love we haven't like put that together, like, oh yeah, take off screen time and like just lift that limit. That's helpful to hear you guys are thinking that way. I think that makes a ton of sense right now. So one we have a couple other questions that are speaking a little bit more to just like community and even time with the spouse. So the first question is this: how are you continuing to connect with others and prioritize community with other women during this time? As moms, it seems important to have lifelines outside of the home, but quarantine makes it difficult. So what are you guys doing?
Hannah, go.
Okay.
Bobby, you got it? You want to?
Oh, sure. I've been just doing a lot of FaceTime and checking in on friends. Sometimes they'll answer kind of surprised, like, oh, hi, because I don't usually just sit and FaceTime people. But just it's human nature to, crave community and keep in touch with your friends and especially your mom friends and see how they're doing and see how they're relating and what they're struggling with and be that listening ear. And
I have a couple of different things. If you go onto the Grace Central Coast website, we have a few different Bible study options, and I've been doing one of them right now. We have like a morning one for women that need to work from home still, and an evening one, and that's been super great. I'm part of an evening one, and just checking in with these women we're talking about mentoring right now, which there's really I feel like nothing better in this time than to have older women that you're meeting with once a week that are mentoring you still, even if it's through Zoom or whatever. It's been so encouraging to me. And I think just really helped lift my spirits. And we also, our growth group, which is a ministry of our church here too, has been meeting on Wednesdays online, which is another thing you can find on our website. And all that stuff helps, just having those times with our spouses and with a whole group of people where you can talk about spiritual things, but also just how your life is going. And then just being intentional. And for me, it's texting. I don't really like texting people back very much, but I'm trying really hard to be good at that and to text or talk to people that I haven't talked to in a really long time, just to check in on them. So trying to keep an outward focus, not just thinking about myself and why is no one reaching out to me, but just who I can reach out to and who I can think about and who I can pray for right now.
I I love this question because as moms, like we need to know we're not alone in the crazy. And yet like doing something like a Zoom call during the day
Yeah.
is insane. Because I mean, my kids just stick their finger over the camera on the computer and then like you're looking at a fingerprint.
Yeah.
So yeah, you have to get creative and sometimes we have to use our evenings. So a couple things, and this ties into the social media aspect of it, of like how to use it for good. But I've been trying, like if I see a friend post about something that I really like, I text them instead of commenting back or just giving them a love. Like I reach out to them and say like, oh, I saw that, I really love that, or I'm praying for you. That looks really tough. Or so just trying to interact in that way. And then in another, like this, I feel a little bit like a teenager, but I downloaded the Marco Polo app, which is hysterical. And so now like I'm leaving messages for and getting messages back from friends and I get to see their face, but I get to see it like when I'm hiding in the bathroom from my kids or something. So, so like I can, it's like an interaction, but not really without, without the interruptions. But that's been really fun. And it really brings me joy to leave those messages for friends too. So that's something that I've been doing more.
That's a great one.
But you just have to get creative, right? Like we're all doing this. Like how can we get creative in the limited contact we're allowed to have with people, but how can we still maintain relationships and get that community that we have been designed for, that we crave in this season.
Mm-hmm.
It's good. Yeah. The next question relates to relationships, but with your spouse. So here's the question. Can you speak to how you are handling your relationship with your spouse, finding space together, or grace for when they are handling this crisis differently? So a few different questions in there. But so the first one again is, how are you handling your relationship with your spouse, finding space together? And what if you guys are kind of on different places in handling this controversy or the crisis? Is there some controversy between you and your spouse? And so what would you say to this individual regarding those questions?
That's a tough one, right? I mean,
easy to talk about kids.
Yeah, it's easier to talk about kids. I think that it's really a daily practice in giving grace, because you're all of a sudden, everyone's at home all the time. So you've got one spouse working, in a corner somewhere, and then you've got the kids at home and the mom, and she's trying to hold it all together. And it's sort of a breeding ground for disaster, if you think about it. Tensions are high with everyone. And so for me, I have to daily surrender to the Lord and ask him to help me give grace to my husband and my children and myself, because we're all imperfect and we're all going to rub each other the wrong way and we're all going to mess up. It's so hard. But at the flip side of that though, is then like how, again, like this brings me back to the first question, like how can we reframe that? Like I could get super annoyed that there are people at home, my husband's at home all the time, I have to try to keep the kids quiet while he's on a call. Or can I find joy that he is here? And if I feel like I need to step outside for a second and take 5 minutes to myself, I knock on the door and I say, I really just need you to take the kids for 5 minutes. I'm going to lose my mind. And he steps in, handles the kids. I step out, I do my deep breathing, I come back in, and we move on with the day. So I'm trying to choose joy in this and see like how we can all work in this situation together. And then we're not really processing it differently, other than I don't read the news and I ask him to only tell me the good news. So we don't talk a lot about news. I just tell him when there's something good, just let me know.
You're so cute. I think a really, really important thing in all of this is just communication, just communicating the way you're feeling in every situation. If you're feeling overwhelmed by all of this and your spouse is not, I don't know if that's the situation, but seems like a possible scenario. Just communicating how you feel and being open and honest. And when you're in the same space together all the time, talking about the things that are hard for each other and the things that would help each other out. For me, it's really important when my husband, he sometimes works from here, sometimes has an office where he's by himself. But when he's here, it's really crucial to me that he works in certain spaces and doesn't spend the time that he's around our children working. I think that's really important. And we've had to have a few discussions about that, and they'll probably come up again. But just continuing to be open and honest in the kindest way that you can about how you're feeling about everything. The fact that maybe this is hard for you, or maybe it's not hard for you, and you need to be understanding of a spouse that it is hard for. And just being honest about where you need your workspaces to be and how you work together in the home, and that giving each other grace that you're both kind of figuring out this new rhythm of being together and working together every day.
Yeah, I agree with both of you guys. Those two things are huge: grace and communication. Yeah, with us, my husband's been working from home more, and I love it because he's able to help with the kids in between his meetings and all that. But I also need to recognize that he is not a homebody like I am, and he actually likes getting to go out and go to work. And so instead of at the end of the day when he's been working and helping with the kids nonstop, to not just beg him for attention and kind of let him have his end of the day, and to not be so passive during the day, and really try to process what I'm feeling and communicate that to him, since we're in such close quarters. And yeah, just be upfront and communicate and give lots of grace on both ends.
Yeah.
And I think it's, I'm thinking through, I think there was a question in there about like making time for each other, and
Yeah.
how hard that is with everyone home all the time. There's no date nights anymore. There's nowhere to go on a date if you could. And so like, how do you create that intentional time to be together and hang out and talk? And for us, like, we've got kids that are up at 5:30 in the morning, and then teenagers that go to bed at the same time as us. So it's just like, there's constantly someone else awake with us. And so we haven't been great about this, but I'm realizing now on week 5 of this, how desperately I need that alone time with him. And so even just as we're talking, I'm thinking like, well, why couldn't we just like go for a walk around the block, the two of us, once, like, because my oldest is 14, she can be home with the kids while they're sleeping. So I think it just takes, I think like as this goes on, we're gonna, and if you feel that angst in your heart, it's probably because we're not connecting with our husbands as much, because we're all just trying to survive and do everything that needs to happen in the day and get everyone fed 8 million times a day. And so when you feel that, like, just stopping for a minute and saying like, when was the last time the two of us like stepped outside, like even just had a change of scenery and sat on the driveway together and just talked or looked at the stars, or, you know, so just being creative and intentional, I think, is getting to be even more important now than it was when this first started.
Good.
Yeah, those are great thoughts. I think, Jess, I really like what you said, just that feeling of that angst. It's like, yeah, like maybe this is part of the reason why. And I think that's one of the things about this season is it's just such a flurry. It's hard to even analyze what's going on around you, but trying to find space to have that analysis is a challenge too. So it's a double-edged sword there. It's really, really challenging. But I think you're right in that that's probably a reason for why things can feel so different, is because some of these relationships that are so vital are so strained right now as well. So yeah, that's all great wisdom. Yeah, thanks. And here's a question about grandparents and connecting with others in kind of that in the broader family. So are any of you doing things to try and include grandparents and relatives that aren't getting to see your kids right now? Any ideas how to keep close with them?
We moved here to San Luis Obispo just over a year now, from Orange County, where my family is at. And since we moved, I've been FaceTiming them a lot, mostly just putting my phone on the kids' faces and having them say hi and stuff. And so we're still keeping up with that. And I just try to call my mom and dad as much as I can, just so the kids can see them and keep in touch.
We are doing weekly Zoom calls with both sides of the family, both sets of grandparents. So teach your parents Zoom, they can figure it out. But those have been really fun. Good for my kids to get to see their grandparents, and good for us to get to see them. I think that's another hard thing. We all really miss grandparents right now. And, there was trips planned and stuff planned, and just recognizing that it's hard for our grandparents and hard for our kids too. It's another area of sadness, but yeah, just doing the best we can to connect with them. Video is a really good thing, so they can actually see the kids. But.
Yeah. I mean, I don't live near any of my family, so it's the same thing, Zoom calling. But I was seeing somebody's post on social media, of course, but just of they like went and did an Easter egg hunt in like the grandparents' front yard. So the grandparents sat like right in the front door and watched as the kids were doing an Easter egg hunt in the front, and so we're all just trying to be creative and like recognizing like our kids are missing grandparents, the grandparents are missing kids.
Yeah.
But we want to protect them. And so how can we have this relationship in this season and in the best way possible? So, but I just think it takes like intentional communication.
Right.
So.
Yeah, that's one of the nice features of Zoom is you can actually like set up recurring Zoom calls.
Yeah.
Like, oh, there it is. It's on the schedule. I know it's coming up. Yeah. And in a season when, life is so crazy and off balance, it's nice to have some things on the calendar. Our calendar has been completely redone in these days for sure. Yeah. I love this question, and I'm glad that someone asked it. And it's this: how are you taking care of yourselves?
This is I was just talking about this one with my sister-in-law today. I have a sister-in-law who's really good at finding the things that she loves and using those, like creating activities that our kids loves as well with them. Like she loves being outdoors and hiking. And so she takes her kids hiking with her because it gives her energy, it gives her life. But then she takes her kids along because our kids are with us nonstop right now. Hers already are, but it helps her. For me, it's not hiking. I used to really like to go to Target. Today, I drove to the Target drive up to have some like 20 minutes of quiet in my car. And my really good friend Katie was also there at the Target drive up to have 20 minutes of quiet in her car. So sometimes it's something like that, just like some space and doing the things that give you a little bit of space, a little bit of breathing room, and like conversations with your spouse as well about when you need a break, like Jess, you were kind of saying. But just being honest about like, okay, I need to take some time to myself now, or just have some moments to breathe, but also finding things during your day that you enjoy, that you can bring your kids along with you because they're here right now and all the time. So what can we do? Or we have another friend who loves art, and she's been doing like a lot of art with her kids, just finding those things that intersect with what we love and what we can do with our children.
I mean, I think this is a question that all moms, the day we found out that's all moms of school age kids, the day we found out school was canceled, we were like, when are we going to get our me time? Like, what is this going to look like? And so I had a friend text me today, and she's like, I was on a walk today and just by myself, and I just was thinking about you, and I really hope you got some alone time today. And I was like, no, none. But today I didn't need it. And so I think, like Hannah, you said this, like, it's really taking inventory of our heart. And like, I feel like I've gotten to know myself and my triggers a lot better, just even in these last 4 weeks of knowing what I can handle, and then stepping out before I reach the tipping point. And so even on, especially actually on those days that it was raining so much, I put on my rain boots and my rain jacket, and I went for a walk around my neighborhood by myself just for 15 minutes or something. And it was like so life-giving, because it just reset me and just gave me even just a few minutes. So I don't need, 4 hours while the kids are gone. I mean, that's lovely while they're at school, but like my needs are changing now. And so I'm going to take that 15-minute walk when I can, and it's really going to help. And yeah, like Hannah was saying, like, what makes you feel better? I have to work out first thing in the morning, and that's just non-negotiable. It's going to make me feel better. And so even if that means doing a workout video in my living room while my kids are literally hanging on my leg, I do it. And I think, wow, this is not very fun. But when I finish, I'm like, I'm so glad I made that time to do it, even though my kids were right there next to me. They're seeing me take care of myself,
Right.
which is really important for them to see.
Yeah, mine's been, I definitely need alone time at least just like an hour a day of just getting to watch TV, watch one of my shows. And I usually do that during the kids' nap time. But if my 2-year-old isn't napping and decides to get out of her bed, I've kind of been letting that go lately and just saying, well, I guess your nap time is now room time. I'll get you in an hour. But so that's been good for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think something good that's come out of it is a lot of the time that I would spend doing like my devotions or Bible reading or whatever, I would do that alone, but I can't really now. So the kids are around for all of that as well, which is probably a benefit that they're seeing that more than they maybe would have seen it before. So I think that's one good thing, and just recognizing we don't have to have some perfect scenario to sit and read our Bible and spend time with God, but it's okay if our kids are flying around while we're doing that. And it's probably actually good for them to see. So that's been a positive, I think, of this.
I think just overall, our kids are seeing all that we do in a day, and and they get to be along for all of it now and be part of it. And I don't think this goes with this question, but I think it's important just to remember, like, let's try to include our kids as much as possible. I have one of my kids just wants to be in the kitchen constantly helping me, which is awesome. So I'm like, come on in. You just literally dump powdered sugar all over the place. That's okay. So you're just like, it's no longer just high efficiency. Let's just get everything done that we need to be done. We're slowing down, letting our kids join in, creating more of a mess along the way, but that's okay because life is kind of a mess right now. So just do it.
I love that.
Well, as we kind of close up, I'd love to just ask each of you just a way in which your faith in Jesus, a particular promise of his, a particular aspect of who he is, or an aspect of the gospel, the good news of Jesus, how that thing has really, that part of your faith has sustained you in this time. So something that's just unique to you that has kind of lifted your spirit and kept you enduring faithfully during this time.
For me, something that I feel like the Lord's been reminding me is that he is not changing and he is the same. Even, life gets harder when you have kids and you don't really get that same quiet time in the Word, and even your prayer life changes a little bit. And while being quarantined, I've realized that I do need that routine, and I do need to carve that time in. But even in the midst of all of that and all of my shortcomings, the Lord is still the same, and he's still there. And that's been really encouraging to hang on to.
That's great.
Yeah, I mean, mine is really similar to Bobby's, but just the steadfastness of God, that I can count on him to be the same that he was yesterday, that he's going to be the same tomorrow as he is today in this moment. And I can't really count on anything else in my life to be like that. And so to hold on to him, to seek refuge under that promise that he will never change, has been a great source of hope to me. because like I said, I can't even hear the news unless it's good. And so I know where to get the good news from. He's my good news.
That's great. Towards the beginning of this, I had a lot of anxiety about family, anxiety about finances, just how we were going to kind of get through all of this. And my brother-in-law is a pastor in the Midwest, and he did this little short Facebook snippet about the verse. I think it's in Philippians. I'm not positive. It's for me to live as Christ, to die as gain. And I think just that reminder, this is I feel like what God keeps teaching me in this is, what do I really believe about God? Do I really truly believe that to live as Christ and to die as gain? Or is that just something that I've said my whole life? And I think if I believe that, these anxieties go away, because I don't need to be afraid in this life anymore. And I can get through the hardships of our daily routine and our daily life, because I remember that my life is about Christ and about living him and portraying him in everything that I do for my children, for my husband, and the little daily aspects of life that seem tedious and hard right now. So yeah, just that verse, and just clinging to, like, God showing me through this time, what do I really believe, and living that out. And this has been such a good test of that, and a good way to really examine my heart and what I believe about God. So.
It's so great. Thank you, ladies, for your wisdom and for just like sharing so personally. And there's such a vulnerability as well. And I think that vulnerability is evidence of really just the humility that all of you have in saying, I don't have it figured out, and yet my God's with me. So thanks for your responses, and just for caring for all those who have asked these questions tonight. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Ben.
Yeah. And, I think just going back to where we started, this idea of, are you going to survive or thrive? Just one of the things that you said was that, that can really create a sense of guilt, like this weightiness. And I think one of the things that's unique about Christianity is that we actually have a solution for that guilt. It's not that you ignore it. That's not really a solution. It's not sweeping it under the rug. It's not like denying it and trying to say, like, okay, yeah, that didn't actually happen, and medicating it with a substance or some other fun activity or something like that to make yourself feel better about that guilt. Those are two options that the world is promoting. I just read a statistic that, alcohol sales are up astronomically right now, as people are just trying to deal with this situation that we're in. And a lot of what people are dealing with, especially I think moms, you guys are talking about, like, that sense of, like, I'm not living up to what these other people are doing. I'm feeling guilty. I'm not feeling like I'm enough. And so what do Christians do with that guilt? Well, Christians say, yeah, we make mistakes, and yet we have a Savior who died for our mistakes. And so those mistakes don't define us anymore. And so we can live in freedom and not be seen as these people who are ridden and weighed down with guilt, but like we can actually cast those aside, because they've actually been paid for on the cross. That's what Easter was all about. The death of Jesus paid for our guilt, and his resurrection shows us that it actually worked, and that he's alive, and that we have hope of eternal life as well. And so Christian moms have this amazing ability to not let guilt get them down, and to actually get back up on their feet, as these ladies are doing, and move forward in a way that is going to bring about enduring faithfulness. Because otherwise, I just don't know how you do it. And so, ladies, thanks for just showing the example of that, and for encouraging these gals in that direction that are tuning in tonight. And I just want to say something. If you're a husband and you're watching this, man, I hope that, like, I learned a ton. I hope you're learning a ton as well, because there's a lot of things that I'm taking away that I'm going to go talk to my wife about right after this in just a few minutes. And just even perspectives that I hadn't considered, and ways that I would love to support her more in this time. And so with that, I just want to thank you all for tuning in to Help for a Hurting World and this episode. And, please use this as a resource. Send this to those who might be interested, might be helped, and hopefully they feel welcomed in this discussion panel. Hopefully they feel respected, and hopefully it's something that's helpful for them. That's what it's all about. And so we hope to see you next time on Help for a Hurting World, and just be on the lookout for our next episode coming up soon. So thanks again.